you enjoy this beautiful new background, serene view of the Pioneer Valley with UMass in the distance, a fleeting memory. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a database that I've mentioned before, America's News, or the NewsBank, and talk about searching and then refining the search for some articles of interest. I'll be using a keywords phrase, social distancing. Look at what kind of articles, what sorts of discussion there was, or framing, if we want, of social distancing mentions. And we're going to be focusing on refining the search, selecting and downloading material from it, which by default, unfortunately, comes as PDFs, which you can upload into MAXQDA, but they aren't really as usable as friendly as in text files. So I'm going to show you how to prep the text data in a fairly straightforward, if slightly time-consuming, but not too bad for what we're doing, way. So we can upload text files into MAXQDA. And then most importantly, once you save that as a text file, there's a little trick for breaking up the content so it recognizes the individual articles and uploading that way to MAXQDA. Okay, so let's switch to the browser. So if you go to your library page and search, so you know that if you're going to search the library, there are a lot of options. You want to share, you want to search under databases and look for America's News. And you search for that, and you click on America's News. And then you'll get a general search field that you can place. You can start by refining it right away, and there's some options. I'm going to just assume that I start searching their entire database, which is a lot of different stuff. There's actually some really cool things in here besides straight news that you can explore. So I'm going to put in quotes social distancing. It might be interesting. Actually, I'm just going to focus on recent mentions of this. It would be interesting to see whether that phrase was used at earlier times prominently in the news. So I'm going to select a field. I can do all text. That'll give me a lot of articles. I'm going to just do lead first paragraph. It's still going to do a lot of items, but it'll reduce it a bit and emphasize the prominence of that phrase. I'm not going to put anything else in quite yet, and search. And we see the results. You can see 12,717. If I hadn't limited it to lead first paragraph, I think it was like 150,000, so a lot more. So let me show you. Unfortunately, I mentioned before, this is not one of those like ProQuest where you can do 100 results at a time. Same thing with congressional record. You can search 100 at a time. So it's only 20 at a time, which is a bit of a pain. I'm going to do some limitations. First of all, in searching, you can see about a bunch of things that are coming up first from India and New Delhi. That's fine if that's what I want to look globally. I can pick a particular country. I'm going to go with just North America. And once I select North America, I have an option to choose between Canada and the United States if I want to refine it further, and I will. I'll choose USA, so that limits it to 7,406. You can already see some of the top hits, the PR Newswire. You can separate out actually Newswire versus newspaper versus magazine. Newswire are things like the Associated Press, Reuters, and you can see other top hits, Daily Beast, Mashable. So this is including online only sources as well. I'm going to limit the date to very recently. You can just do the individual year. There's lots of options you have. I'm going to do just the month of March through today. So it's the whole month, although today might not be available yet. 03/01/2020 to 03/31/2020, and apply. And there's the 7,000. So almost all the results were from this month, perhaps unsurprisingly. Let me show you another way that I can refine, and actually this is probably a good idea if you're using America's News, this NewsBank, because there's so many different sources. You might want to choose a particular prominent sources, maybe sample some less prominent ones if you want to get a general sense, and you already know how to sample because we did that using spreadsheets. So you can sample, if you have, you'll see in a moment, a number of different sources you can randomly select if you'd like. So under source name, if I hit more options, you can see all these different, right, alphabetically. In fact, so notice there's, with this search, there's a lot more sources than this, but with this particular source, 1,373 sources are coming up. So hypothetically, if you wanted to, you don't need to do this, but if you wanted to get a mix of sort of some are from Alabama, some are from, you could, in your spreadsheet, do 1 through 1,373, and subset several of them, right? And then just go by using the names and numbers. You can go, like when I go to J, it's, yeah, all right. I guess it's 1 through 100 on each. Well, anyway, I'll leave that up to you. It's not really necessary. I was going to actually suggest, let me pick out a couple of prominent ones. New York Times isn't in here. You can do that separately. I'm going to do New York Daily News and New York Post because those are tabloids that tend to lean left and lean right respectively. And I'll do the USA Today. And I'll do something else, not be totally coastally biased. I'll do Atlanta, I think it's like called the Constitution or something like that. And there's Associated Press if I wanted to do those. Number 2, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Okay, 2008 to current. Let's do that. 2013 to current. That's weird. These might be different. Let me just select all of those. Okay, and I'm going to apply. Let's see what we get. All right, so 84 results. Again, if we're somewhere in the, I don't want to be doing the sampling with the method that I laid out for you. There are other ways to do it, but I want to just be able to do it in spreadsheets. Obviously, I don't want to be sampling from 50,000. Myself, if I were doing it, I'd use like a statistical program like our Stata and sample that way. But it's not worth just to sample from 50,000. So it's much better to come up with justifiable ways to limit the search to like it's certainly less than 1,000, and then you could sample within those. And just explain how you decided, whether you're deciding on particular dates, theoretically justified, or particular sources. Again, maybe you want to sample sources first, or you want to purposefully, rather than randomly select, say, a few very prominent publications and then maybe one from each region or something. It's up to you. And again, for this paper, I'm not going to be too. I'm not going to press you too hard on your choices here. All right, so I just want to show you. I think I'll select all of these. It might break it up into a few different. I think each 20 is going to be its own document, for better or worse. So I'm going to select all on the first screen and select all on the second screen. I can also sort these according to match instead of date. That might be a little bit closer to a nice mix, but I'm going to select them. I would select them all. I'm actually going to, just for the purposes of this demonstration, maybe stop at 3 here. And then I notice I go over to download. It's kind of nice actually in this search. You can see the individual instances of some of these terms. So I'm going to hit download. And I don't need citations. And it tells us that it's going to be split up into 4 different groups. And I'm actually just going to, you have to download one after another, which, again, I think they're basically trying to limit how much you download so that you, because of copyright issues. But this should not be cumbersome, since we know we're not going to really, as a group, look at more than 1 to 200 total. And if you're going to do broader searches, obviously, let's say just automated searches of phrases, you might want more. Okay, so notice we have a PDF with all the different articles, and they're broken up, and this is useful. They're broken up in the same way. They have copyright at the end, and then they have a title. This actually is something, if you know a little bit of, we're not going to get into this, if you know a little bit of programming, or if you were doing this, let's say, professionally, and you wanted to pick up a good skill, learning to use something like Python, or there are also some other user-oriented programs that let you work with these kinds of anchors to basically say, like, let's break this up into different documents. So every time you see, something of the form, copyright 2022, skip a few words and break up, or the next time there's a return, break it up. We're not going to use those tools. We're going to do something a little more old school. And actually, because this has gone on a bit long, I'm going to stop it here and break this up into a couple of parts. So see ya on the other